Catherine, it looks like it might be a short meeting today. We're light on attendees and light on agenda items. Um, so I want to start off by, I'll have Sarah throw the agenda on the screen. Thank you. So as always, we'll start with the financial statements for last month. I'll talk about the utility billing aging reports. Those aren't quite ready yet, but I do have a bunch of information to share on utility billing as far as shutoffs and penalties and things like that. So we'll dive into that. And then Nick is here to talk about the Arrow Lumber culvert. That is a discussion item on Monday's council meeting agenda. And then, of course, we'll wrap up with the mayor's update. So with that, I'll jump into the financial statements for July. I always do a quick calculation to see where our surplus would be if we ended the biennium. And at the end of July, it continues to be about 1.4 million. It's been the same number for about 3-4 months in a row. So that is still staying pretty consistent. Still have an issue with the shared utility fund being in the negative. That's due to the non-collection of utility penalties due to COVID. That will be something that we do have to fix by the end of this year. So I would be expecting to see that in budget amendment number 3 as most likely a request to use some of the ARPA funding to fix that. We can't have that fund in the negative at the end of the year. That would be an audit issue for us. So that will need some attention. Also, you probably noticed that the legal budget is still way over when compared to where we should be target wise. That's due to the settlement payment. I know at the last meeting we talked about potential options for that settlement payment, but it sounds like council decided to just leave it in the general fund. So that will be part of our upcoming budget amendment as well. So we can get that legal fund budget back in where it should be. We talked a little bit at the last meeting. Catherine brought up the new law enforcement and criminal justice funding. We did get that payment from the state. It is in the July revenue report under a separate bars code in the general fund. I did connect with Nikki to see what there's not a lot of specific requirements for that. I did a lot of research on it, and it basically just says it's funding to make up for new requirements put in place. So I asked Nikki what that meant, and she said it's supposed to be used for recording devices and training. So I'll be working with her on that to make sure those funds are used in accordance with those requirements. I've been looking a lot at the upcoming budget amendment and the budget calendar because we do have our mid-biennium budget modification coming up. So the timing with budget amendment 3 and that mid-biennium budget modification actually is only like one council meeting off. So the first council discussion and public hearing for the mid-biennium budget modification is October 25th. So that'll just be paired with budget amendment 3. It doesn't make sense to do budget amendment 3, get it approved the first meeting in October, and then do another budget amendment at the end of October. So the timing looks really good for that. We'll be working on that. I don't know exactly what we're going to be doing. We do have this surplus, but I don't know if that's something that council wants to use or just let lie. So we'll be having those conversations coming up as well. And we also have LTAC coming up. The applications for LTAC open 1st of September, and we accept them to the end of September. So I'm going to be working with the mayor and Diane on our LTAC applications as well as funding projections to figure out how much money can be awarded. I think the first meeting of LTAC, the LTAC committee, is like the first week of October. So we're going to be getting really busy with that and budget amendment stuff in these next couple months. And I think as far as the financials, that's about it. The next couple meetings that we have for the finance committee will probably be more in depth as far as LTAC, budget amendment items, things of that nature. So we're going to be getting real busy with that stuff here at the next meeting.
Can I ask a couple questions, Angie? So you said you're looking at 1.4 million surplus. That's because our ending balance is 4.094. Is that right? 4,094,000.
Yeah, it's just
we wanted to keep the 2 million.
right. It's because our tax revenue has been so consistently high and things like that. We just have way more revenue than we expected to have, and the expenses are still running a little less than expected. The revenues are the big piece of it. They're at 6.5% over target.
Right.
And then the expenses are about 1.5. So on the revenue side, we're just seeing the continued record-breaking numbers, which are contributing to that surplus.
Right, right. And so as I'm going through, I was looking, I've been mindful of the 439, the shared utility fund, and it's in the negative. And I guess my question about that is, it looks like we depend a lot on these late charges. Is that an effective way to budget? What if everybody paid their bills on time?
So that's a piece of it, but the bigger piece of that fund comes from the utilities. So we do transfers in from all the other utility accounts to cover that. So in the event that penalties ever go down or people start paying their bills, we would have to contribute more from the other utilities to fund the shared utility.
So that leads to my next question. I think I remember you saying something about an allocation study. Mm-hmm. Do we have one coming up, and
yep.
Would that be an appropriate thing to be looking at as we're going through this?
We do have it scheduled for March of 2022. I wanted to wait until we had a clean non-COVID year. So to do it at the beginning of 2022, they'll be looking at 2021, which is a better year to look at than 2020 because we had all that COVID stuff happening in 2020. So the hope is we start that in March. It takes a few months to get that, but then that new cost allocation plan will be built into the next biennial budget. So it is in the works.
So could we, as at this year-end budget adjustment that you talked about, is it possible at that time to move some funds from water and sewer, which seem to be doing pretty well and collecting, a lot more than they're spending? Thanks, Nick. But is it possible to move from those funds mid-year or mid-biennium?
Yes, we did that at the end of last year.
Oh, okay.
To cover that deficit in the shared utility, because we had a negative fund balance that we had to clean up at the end of last year too. So that's the other option. If we don't use the ARPA funding, we would have to just transfer more money into there from the utilities.
And then it makes me think about the stormwater utility. Can we transfer any funds from other utilities into that, or from the surplus? Is there a mechanism for doing that?
We can't transfer money in from the other utilities, but you can do whatever you want with general fund money. So okay. General fund would be the one that you could use for that purpose. And I think Nick's going to get a little bit more into that when we dive into that culvert discussion.
Okay.
The big reason behind that discussion is that this is an unbudgeted thing that came up, and we need to talk about what we're going to do. So We'll be talking about how the revenues are looking and also like what our options are.
Okay, and then my last question may be one that's for us to think about going forward with the ARPA funding. If council, it seems like we need a workshop now. I see that I think it's Montesano's doing a workshop on how they want to begin allocating these ARPA funds. I don't know when that Montesano City Council is meeting on it, but they're going to have a workshop. But if we were, so it seems like we need one of those, but if we were as a council to say, let's use some of these ARPA funds to backfill the utility overdue utility bills, then somehow we need to forgive those customers who are behind. We would have to have a mechanism, some sort of application process. Is that how we would do it? And maybe ask Greater Grays Harbor to have people who are behind apply for funding from these ARPA funds of ours, and if they get half or more, figure out a way you pay this and we'll forgive this part. Is that something we can do?
Yeah, I think my understanding is when the representative from Greater Grays Harbor was on the call with us, would have to determine how much we were willing to, pledge to helping people. And then they would handle the application process, and their fee to help was pretty minimal compared to what it would take for us to do it on the city side.
Yeah.
I think it would be a matter of, we don't have the resources to do it on the city side, but we can't just go wipe people's accounts off either. There will have to be some kind of application process and some demonstration of need, which it sounded like Greater Grays Harbor was working on, and that was an option.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions before? That kind of segues right into the next topic. So the
That way.
billing agent, we run our auto pays tomorrow, so I did not have those reports available today. We will make sure they're posted with the rest of the finance committee meeting documents on Monday. There's been a lot of, we've been working with the mayor a lot on coming up with a plan for utility billing. The governor's order expires at the end of September. So technically we could start doing shutoffs again mid-October. Talked to the mayor. We decided that it was in our best interest and the best interest of the citizens to not start shutoffs during the holidays. So we will be starting those in January. So that'll be both the shutoffs and the penalties. We'll also be opening our utility billing lobby back up in January. We definitely need to be open when we start doing the shutoffs because we need to be able to interact with the customers on a face-to-face basis, during our working hours. So the plan with that is we are creating a specific webpage for utility billing COVID resources, and it'll have, we're putting a payment plan information sheet, a payment plan application. We got a flyer together that will be going out in the utility billing reports for the next 4 months. So people will have 4 months, at least 2 months, because they get bills every other month, notice before any of this actually takes effect. Definitely have it on the website, probably put a Facebook post out. So giving people plenty of time. It'll also have links to resources available through other agencies. So if we do end up doing the thing through Greater Grays Harbor, kind of timing is of the essence because you'd want that to get going sooner rather than later before the shutoffs start happening. So just something to think about. So that's pretty exciting.
I'm sorry.
We're excited to get, I think we're one of the first cities to get an actual web page up and get kind of in front of this. So, and give people a lot of notice before it actually starts happening.
So can I ask a question about, so
Sure.
you say you have a flyer.
Yep.
Is this a separate document from the bill? It's not just that little header on the top that nobody reads?
It's a separate full page bright yellow insert. So you'll get a bill along with the bright yellow piece of paper. So we went back and forth, like, should we do half a page? I'm like, no, because half a page might get stuck in the envelope. Let's do a full page, bright yellow, separate piece of paper. So yeah, that'll be going out starting with the batch of bills that hits mailboxes the first week of September. So in a couple weeks.
Okay.
We're going to have the web page up before then, so people, because the flyer refers them back to our web page, so it kind of all corresponds together.
And will it be a part of our regular city webpage, or a freestanding, or a link?
It's our utility billing webpage will have a COVID-19 resource link, and then it'll go to a separate webpage that's all devoted to COVID-19 stuff.
Okay.
I would bet that Sarah and Sandy will probably put one of those news alerts on there to let people know that it's there, maybe a Facebook post. So they have a good way of getting that information right on the main page so people know it's there.
I was
Okay.
just gonna say that would be the plan. We'd wait for Angie's, hey, we're gonna build the web page now and have it up there, but closer to the time when these flyers are going out and whatnot, we'll do a news brief and a website alert. And then, like Angie said, also post it to the Facebook, but we're taking their lead because we don't want them to also get bombarded before the fact of them being able to handle all of the things. So it'll happen.
So that argues for a workshop soon, so council can make a decision on whether part of the ARPA funding can be, whether we want to use part of the ARPA funding for this purpose. If we're going to put everything up by the 1st of September.
Yeah, I think that would be in the best interest of the people needing assistance, is to get out in front of it before they get their water disconnected in January. So it makes sense, the sooner the better, because I'm sure it's going to take Greater Grays Harbor time to vet all those applications and go through that too. So.
Right. Mayor Dingler, do you think, I'm wondering if maybe a workshop a week after our meeting. I mean, we're talking about our meetings the 23rd, this document coming out the first week of September. If council hasn't made some sort of a decision by then, at least on that portion, it can't be, it'd be premature to add it to the flyer that's going out. What do you think about a workshop or adding something to a discussion to the agenda? It's pretty light on Monday. Or maybe we're not ready for it.
We did the agenda setting and it was not brought up, and we don't have, I mean, you guys are the ones who put the rules in place. You don't want things that aren't brought up at agenda setting. We could ask to put it on the agenda Monday night.
Mhm.
I think it would be a good thing. I don't know that it needs a separate meeting. I think it just, council needs to decide how much they really want to put into this. And, with information from Angie on how much is owed and how much of that appears perhaps to be COVID related.
Okay.
So I'm happy to do that. And I see no reason that council would not want to discuss that.
I can't imagine given this information that we wouldn't. I mean, it's imminent.
Yep.
I'd be happy to do whatever you recommend to try to advance it to the agenda. If that means adding an item, I'm happy to make a motion. I would imagine somebody would second it and we could have a vote, but
Well, when we do the agenda, I will bring this up,
okay.
and that we want to add it to the agenda. And if someone, made a motion to do that, that would be great.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, anything else on? All right, we're making this easy today. All right, Nick, you're up.
Well, it's easy until I get involved, right? So I was going to joke that, here, we've got a light agenda and, and I'm here. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of power through this. So, the topic is, the Arrow Culvert, and there's a culvert in between, two sections of property, one on Point Brown, one abutting Seahorse, where they traverse back and forth across this culvert. Taking a step back, I think it's probably appropriate to talk, just briefly about, the stormwater system. I did an introduction at the last council meeting where we talked about the basic component is that rain's hitting the ground, it's flowing off of the ground, and it needs to go somewhere. And ultimately, our structure is set up so that, we've got catch basins, we've got culverts, we've got a variety of infrastructure that we call our collection and conveyance infrastructure. And that infrastructure then conveys it down to the fresh waterways and then out the outfall. So our collection and conveyance infrastructure, which is the catch basins and culverts, in many cases, the city has constructed, the city has facilitated those improvements. In other cases, those are developer related improvements. And so a perfect scenario of that is this Arrow Culvert. But you can also look at your driveway. Your driveway culvert was installed by a contractor as part of the development process for facilitating your house. And so what we have traditionally done as it relates to ownership and operation of that asset is that once the new asset is in the ground, however it got there, whether it was development funded and authorized, or if it was facilitated by the city, it's now our asset. It's part of our system that is used to convey the stormwater runoff all the way out of the city. And so what we've traditionally taken the approach on is that because it's our asset, it's our responsibility to maintain and replace. And we've done that in a variety of different cases, all throughout the city. But I think, first things first, one of the big questions that we're going to have to, kind of jump through that hurdle on is intentionally make the decision that this is our asset and that it's not a developer responsibility. The reason I say that is as I started looking into this a couple of years ago, agencies view this differently. So a perfect example is the city of Aberdeen views it as the homeowner's asset, and that it's their responsibility to replace that section of conveyance piping. The city of Hoquiam views it as a city asset, because if the property owner doesn't maintain it, it causes a problem upstream and impacts other property owners. And so there's a trickle up effect that occurs. And so the Department of Transportation, they view it the same way as the city of Aberdeen, and that their scenario is if the property owner is not maintaining it, they just go rip it out. And so obviously we want to find some reasonable balance there. But I think as we walk into this, I want to make sure that we're being intentional. That if we're going to go down that path, I'm completely fine with that. Personally, I think it's the right thing to do. As far as it's our asset after it's in the ground, very similar to Hoquiam's, because there are significant impacts that can occur if somebody does not maintain that properly. And so that is kind of the springboard into where we're at right now with the Arrow Culvert. What is going on with the Arrow Culvert is, basically when you put something like this together, you have a bunch of different pipe segments, and these pipe segments join together. And in this case, one of those pipe joints has separated. And that separated pipe joint now is allowing material to fall through that separation and being conveyed downstream. And so it's opened up a pretty noticeable hole above the culvert, to the point where we have steel plates on it. And something needs to be done. At the end of the day, it has become a legitimate hazard, and it needs to be addressed. And so I'm looking at a couple of different options to kind of band-aid this. But part of the reason why I wanted to get out in front and have the conversation with council is that if we need to facilitate an emergency repair, i.e. if I need to replace the entire culvert, if I can't band-aid it to get us through to the 23 budget cycle, then if I'm going to have to make an adjustment, we made promises when we adopted the stormwater rates that we were going to do certain projects, and that if we have to deviate from that, I need to make sure that everybody's aware that that's a deviation that is occurring, and it's occurring because we're addressing a hazard. Now, the stormwater fund does not have the reserves, set aside so that we have the capability to address emergencies like this. Unfortunately, I mean, it just kind of is what it is. So at this point in time, I just kind of wanted to raise awareness. I don't have the solution yet. I'm still working with contractors. I'm looking at a couple of different approaches to kind of band-aid this, and depending on the band-aid, I may have to request diversion of resources so that we can either be doing this work and replacing this next year, or in a perfect world, planning on replacing it in a future budget cycle when we've gone through the right process to adopt the rates and go through the financial process accordingly. So I know this is a lot of information that I'm throwing out here, but again, the basic framework is we have a problem. We don't have a lot of resources that are available to address that problem. And to address that problem the right way, which is replacing the culvert, I will have to divert resources, i.e. not do something that we said we were going to do, to correct that. But all of that is contingent upon me not getting a suitable Band-Aid in place that can last a couple of years. So that's the nitty gritty. And like I said, I know it was a lot of information, and I'll work on refining, how I'm going to approach this at the council meeting. But I'm sure there's a lot going through your head. What are your thoughts?
I feel like I'm the only one who doesn't know anything or doesn't know much about this. So if it's okay, a couple of questions do come up. How long is this culvert? When you say the Arrow Lumber Culvert, but then you say property next to it, presumably that's behind Playtime Family Fun also? Is this like not a typical 10-foot driveway culvert?
No, it's not. It's not 10 feet. And so it is, that's about 60 feet long, I believe. And so again, it's being used. Arrow Lumber is, you access the front office off of Point Brown, and their lumber yard is on the back side of the property off of Seahorse. And so really it's that property width, between Point Brown and Seahorse. And so fortunately for us, this doesn't go all the way, up and down. It is on the overhead ditch. It's, one of many culverts throughout that corridor that do need to be replaced. This one just has failed to a point where it's creating a hazard.
So you said you said between Point Brown and Seahorse, but it doesn't go west to east. It goes north to south, right? Would be along Seahorse.
No, it's actually the Oyha ditch.
That's what which is between, right? Seahorse is on the east side of Oyhut, or Clover Creek, some people call it. So the reason why I'm trying to clarify is because I had a conversation with Mike Doolittle, and this is several months ago. And is this the same culvert he was talking to me about?
Nope.
No, okay, because he was expressing similar concerns for his culvert.
There's one adjacent to his property, but that's separate and independent from this conversation.
Okay, he said, he actually told me he'd be happy to replace it, but he hadn't gotten much traction on trying to work with anybody or get the appropriate permits or something. Are there ecology permits or something that have to be given or awarded, or whatever you want to call it, to replace these culverts?
Well, so we've taken a hard left turn. That's like I said, that project is, you know, a couple of 100 feet away from away from the problem that I'm talking about.
Well, but
So-
I'm bringing it back to that culvert, that arrow culvert.
The
Does
process-
ecology require you to get a permit to, let's say, let's say we got an extra $1 million and council in their infinite wisdom says, let's put the money in the fund to replace this culvert. Would you have to get a permit from ecology or from anyone else?
Not from ecology. So the permitting process is relatively straightforward. You're going through SEPA, you're going through the HPA process. And so SEPA is us, the city, HPA is Fish and Wildlife. And so, but there's still a process that you have to go through that does take time. And so that's my concern. And I guess, you know, one thing that I didn't identify very well is that everybody knows in Ocean Shores that come October, rains start, that ditch is going to fill up. And so realistically, I have 4 to 5 weeks before, you know, that ditch starts filling up. I cannot get a project permitted, bid, and awarded in the time that we would need to be able to move forward with this. And so that's why I'm looking at a Band-Aid.
So that's what, so this temporary stick something over the top of it is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
You're talking about. That's just lay person's terms. Maybe a big metal something, or like they put those couplings in dielectric unions and that sort of thing for pipes. But you're talking about something, a larger fit, some sort of coupler that would replace this or something?
No, and so what I'm looking at is, you know, like I said, 2 different options right now. Option number 1 is, you know, I'd like to use structural foam to fill the gap that has, you know, with the pipe separating. You know, if I can use structural foam by getting a guy inside there and injecting the foam to fill that void, that's preferred. I don't have a cost on that. You know, the secondary approach would be just to excavate to the top of the pipe and use a similar 48-inch diameter pipe and actually put it over the top. So you'd have your separation, and then I'd overlap that and then screw that into place and backfill it. And then at least it's like I said, a Band-Aid. It's not a permanent solution. You know, this pipe is, you know, 50 years old and it's all rusted out on the bottom. It needs to be replaced. You know, and so I don't want to invest a lot of money into making a longer term fix when the structural integrity of the pipe just isn't there. The pipe and that section is not going to last another, you know, 5 years or 10 years. So I want to minimize the expense on the repair if and at least allow for utilization of that area.
Is this part of what's contributing to the problem with the fresh waterways?
I don't believe so.
Okay, okay. That's all I got.
Yeah, it's a big one. Cool.
Thank you.
Did anybody else have anything?
They know all these answers.
Ooh, is that the end of the meeting then?
We have mayor's update.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I was muted, sorry. Thank you.
Okay, are you ready for mine?
Yep.
All right. You mentioned the LTAC committee, and I was going to ask council if they just wanted to have the same committee that was in place. They got to do really virtually nothing last year. It's Eric Noble, Rick Whittingham, Pat Brunstead, Nancy Eldridge, and Diane Solom. And they were appointed in August of 2019, and they would normally end their term August of 2021. But it seems logical that rather than go through sort of the fussiness of starting over, is we just ask them to stay another year and actually do something this year, because they didn't get to do anything last year because there was too much uncertainty and the convention center wasn't operating and all of that sort of thing.
Can I
Go ahead.
ask?
Sure.
I thought in the council liaison assignments, Bob Peterson was the new chair. Would it be possible to put Bob in that and pull the current chair, Eric, out and keep the rest of this committee?
It certainly would be. And I think you're right. I think that's true. But in any case, it just seems kind of silly to start over when they really didn't get to do much of anything.
They've had a year to think about it.
Yeah, that will be my recommendation anyway. And I'll talk to Bob and see if he is available still on that. And the other thing I wanted to talk just a little bit about is more economic development. Scott and I met with Greater Grays Harbor this past week, and we had a really good discussion about economic development, and we all agreed that there is funding that's going to be available in the next year that we won't see the like of in our lifetimes again. There really are opportunities, and one of those opportunities is through the EDA, the Economic Development, I think it's Association, and they have a deadline of October 19th, and they're looking for clusters of possibilities, and it's a stepped sort of process. And they want to have 3 to 6 or so projects that are proposed by several entities who have grouped together. And so Greater Grays Harbor would be part of putting those entities together. And other groups, I had a meeting this morning, they're also discussing the same thing. And in an existing group, which might be really useful as well. So I just think that one of the things that we all need to be thinking about and proposing to the city is, what are those projects that would be economic, for instance, economic development projects that create jobs and have a long-term benefit to the city and to the, the greater community, but also that can sort of build on one another, that are connected somehow, so that they, they're not just one-offs all by themselves, but they're things that really help build toward a more sustainable, more resilient community. So I will be talking a little bit about that in my mayor's report and giving out some information on where to look on that one. But I think that I think it behooves us to hop on some of these. I don't think we can do all of them, that we just don't have the capacity. But as these things come up, if we have projects that will help our community out and we can go for those, I think we really ought to commit that time. And it may mean that, there's some other things that we don't get done because we have a limited capacity to do this. But with partnering with other groups, that helps create capacity so that, one of the other members might be able to put more time in on X, and another, it might be a month later that the other one can put it in on Y to get these things together. So it's early days on this. These are things that are, I think, going to be just coming out again and again and again. And we just need to be prepared for that and have our thoughts on what it is we can do that creates jobs and, would help our resilience. And that's really all I have at this point. There's just a ton of things going on out there. And it makes it interesting and also very challenging for us as a small city.
I have a couple thoughts and questions, if I may.
Sure.
I remember I was at Highline when they passed the ARRA, American Recovery and Resiliency Act, under Obama after the last after the recession, and they talked a lot at that time about shovel-ready projects. So
Yep.
it seems to me that, if we're going to form partnerships that would help benefit us as well as the other partners, we need to have things in the pipeline that are ready, because I've been thinking about the same thing with the large amount of funding that's going to be coming through now, and how do we use it? So the first thing that came to mind is, of course, broadband, but that's in the ARPA. So is the EDA, are they funding different things, do you think, or would this be the same? Is this,
They have,
is this a different pot?
it is a different pot, but
Okay.
we also strategically want to put in where we're most likely to get the coverage. And if other groups are funding broadband, this one may be less likely to choose projects that include broadband. So we want to be careful, but broadband is a perfect one to talk about in this. And as far as shovel ready, I know this EDA one appears to have upfront money that is sort of the feasibility study portion. So it's not looking for shovel ready. And I think, considering the number of things that will be out there, that there will be a mix of them. So we'll have a little bit of each one. We also have bridges that need to be replaced. and need to be, you know, sort of fortified like the last one we built was, so that it you know, would withstand earthquake better in a sandy kind of, will get sloppy environment if we have an earthquake. So there's a lot of bits and pieces for us to look at. We know what the bridges cost approximately, though each one is a little different in its location.
I'm
But there's
just-
a lot of things, but I would appreciate ideas from council and
Yeah.
from others, and we will kind of group those and try to put something together so that we all sit down and agree on a strategy.
Right. How would a bridge, let's say the Mount Olympus Bridge, a Mount Olympus Bridge replacement, the one off of Falls of Clyde, how would that be, how would that fit in, do you think, to a cluster of projects? Or
Well, I don't know that,
involving us, right?
yeah, I don't know that that would fit into
Okay.
something on this.
Yeah,
But it is something that we're going to need done. And if
Right.
this is the opportunity in this next, you know, year to put in for that, then we should be kind of preparing ourselves for doing that. It's just, I just use that as kind of an example.
okay,
I don't know that that one would create jobs either, other than, you know, the initial work being done, and that generally is a crew from out of town.
do
So-
you have ideas on like partnerships? I'm thinking like with like a partnership with the port, or a partnership with the county, or a partnership with Westport, or do you have ideas on that you're going to share with council?
Well, yeah, and you know, I mean, we've only had known about this for 2 days on this one, so
Well, why don't you have everything ready?
yeah, we're working on it and thinking about it. But
Yeah.
you know, there are a variety of partnerships that you could look at. Some of them would be coast-wide because we have similar needs as other coastal communities. We're all looking at the climate change
Yeah,
and how it's going to affect us, and how do we protect ourselves and our citizens in climate change. So those are all, you know, really big subjects that as well would be of interest. And I was also thinking of our fresh waterways. You know, the fresh waterways are an asset. They are not capitalized upon so much yet, but there is an opportunity there. And they need some things. So that would be another big project. But there's just you know, there's endless projects we could do. It's
Yeah.
all a case of money. So then you get back to how do we work strategically and make sure that we could handle, you know, X number, and are those really the most important ones that we want to do?
right. So a final question, and it comes up because well, I have Grays Harbor Council of Governments tonight, and I'm wondering if there's something you would like me to share with them to sort of get them thinking about this, or would that not be appropriate?
No, I think it's appropriate, and I think that Greater Grays Harbor is going to be one of the kind of bits of glue that helps put this all together. So having Greater Grays Harbor talk about that, they're the most knowledgeable at this point.
Right.
If they talked about that at one of your meetings, I think that'd be really a good thing. And again, so many of these things are going to be slotted in a certain direction. And we won't know until that happens. And some of them may look, you know, may require certain kinds of partners.
Yeah.
And so we'll learn that along the way too. But if we can really look at our top priorities for our community and those we think will most benefit our community, I think that would be really helpful. And then how do we slot those in to some of these other things? Because some of them won't be partnerships where they want multiple entities. Some of them will be individual ones. So
Right.
I think we'll just get a whole variety of things that come at us this next year. And I just want to make sure that we're as ready as we can be. And we'll have to see, I mean, maybe we even, get somebody to help our grant writer out. Because if we miss the opportunity, it is that once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you.
Mhm.